This morning's reading is called What We Do Matters by Laura Horton Ludwig. We are here because we believe what we do matters. We are here because we believe how we live our life matters. That with every act of kindness or meanness, courage or fear, love or hate, we are weaving the fabric of the universe that holds us all. We are here because we need encouragement, because we need strength. We are here because none of us is perfect, but together we inspire one another to try again, to take another step. We are here because we have felt the stirrings of loving grace in our hearts and hands, and we crave more for ourselves and for everyone. We are here because how we live matters. Blessed be.
So thank you, Tiffany. And Tiffany, Frank, and Joy Howard are going to be two new worship leaders very soon. So it takes a lot of courage to get up and talk in front of people. A lot of you make it look easy, but it's not. It takes when you got, all these eyeballs looking at you, and giving a sermon at such a time as this is even more not frightening for me, but gives me pause for sure. Pause and reflect. I want to start this morning on the fourth principle with a reading from a colleague, a friend of mine, Paige Getty, who's a senior minister at the Columbia UU Church. She wrote a short reflection on the fourth principle, partly because I'm going to talk directly and indirectly about the fourth principle. So I want to make sure I cover the fourth principle before I get into whatever I really want to say. As responsible religious seekers, we recognize that we are privileged to be free, to have resources to pursue life beyond mere survival, to continually search for truth and meaning, to exist beyond bonds of dogma and oppression, and to wrestle freely with truth and meaning as they evolve. This privilege calls us not to be isolated and self-centered, believing that our single perspective trumps all others, but rather to be humble, to be open to the great mysteries of truth and meaning that life offers. And those mysteries may speak to us through our own intuition and experience, but also through tradition, community, conflict, nature, and relationships. As a faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism makes sacred the right and responsibility to engage in this free and responsible quest as an act of religious devotion. Institutionally, we have left open the questions of what truth and meaning are, acknowledging that mindful people will in every age discover new insights. End quote. This is essentially the gist of our UU fourth principle. But we have to dig deeper today because today is unlike any other day. Today, there are many who are not being mindful people. And we have a big Tuesday and the following weeks, a big time for us in this country. A lot may change for us, some good, some bad, but either way, we have to gird our loins. I had to look that up. You know what that is? The old priest would wear his long gown, and when they get ready for battle, they pull it up and show their legs. Gird our loins. I'm glad you thought that was funny. Indeed. But I don't want to speak from a place of fear this morning. There's enough of that. But I do want to talk to you about this being a prime time for us to share our values with all in our sphere of influence, and that we must have resilience in the days ahead. That is, to be mentally strong. A few weeks ago, I said, to buckle up and to put your faith belt on, because there are shadowy forces that have come to the light, materializing into something that is anti-UU, anti-democracy, anti-American, and anti-progress. And they're not even hiding their oppressive motives. And they do not seemingly care whether the worth and dignity of all is honored nor respected. Particularly since 2016, many delusional Americans are following bad habits that will lead us toward more suffering. Since 2016, we have been giving permission to the worst parts of us, allowing them to act out. The worst parts of us being given center stage to lie and bully and to play victim. It's a sort of morphing of white supremacy culture that turns oppression back on the oppressed. The progresses in equality are made to look like it is causing oppression for others, simply because we're asking people to share more, to become better human beings, to become more broad-minded individuals. And so they reject even laws and ideas that will make their lives better. It is truly a sickness led by demagogic man who is truly a cancer in American society. And this bad behavior attracts those who are not humble servants, but self-serving fanatics. And desperate and fear-based people fall prey to this far too often. And it is cult-like behavior. I've studied them. And cults do not end well. But what does this have to do with the fourth principle? I'm glad you asked. Everything. We live in a time when there are millions of voices and ideas bombarding our minds. Freedom of speech is alive and well. But what are the limits when speech and expression, or what is printed, is vile, or racist, or misogynistic, or homophobic, or transphobic? There must be a limit, right? Freedom comes with great responsibility, right? Searching, finding your truths comes with accountability, right? That's what we believe here as Unitarian Universalists. I've been reading up on the First Amendment, and it appears that it does protect all speech, secular or religious, unless it directly incites violence or calls for overthrowing the government. The First Amendment was written, in fact, to protect people from tyrannical governmental forces that might try to control speech or the printed word or religious beliefs. It gave citizens and organizations the ability to have separation and autonomy. It's a beautiful concept, except when it's not. Like when organizations and individuals forget about being responsible or accountable, when they become drunk with the wine of their own power or position. Our Constitution, of course, was created in the light of the savage history in Europe, its many wars, beheadings, burning heretics at the stake, the holy wars like the Crusades. It was a bloody mess. And our founding fathers did not want to repeat that history. It was wise to create this separation. But with great freedom, we also have great risk. Because oftentimes, I've said this before and I'm gonna keep saying it, the loudest voices are the ones grabbing the megaphone, They're oftentimes the most toxic in our society. I don't care how much money they have. I don't care if, how big their following is. You have to think people that need that much attention. Why is that? There's damage there. There's trauma there. There's unresolved stuff there, and we edify them too much, and that's why we have the world we have. We have to feed health and starve dysfunction. And then when they have money, of course, to spread their ideas, they can warp the minds and perspectives and have many believe that the world is one big conspiracy theory, and it puts the fourth principle in a precarious place when reason is thrown out and facts don't get checked and opinions are seen as factual. We want all to be free to express, to search for truth and meaning for themselves. But sometimes these perspectives can be warped by unprocessed traumas, brainwashing, delusional thinking, and there are violent outcomes that happen as a result. I don't think our founding fathers understood social media. Of course not. And how all of the ideas and language ingested over time can create these toxic realities and instability. There has to be a limit placed there. And I'm thinking specifically about social media, the company Twitter, that is now owned by a brilliant but narcissistic billionaire who is very libertarian in his views of freedom. And I'm unsure if he knows the consequence of what he is attempting to do by unfreezing accounts of those who are misguided and damaged individuals who God knows need filters or blocked for their own sake and for humanity's sake. Technology and history have not caught up with each other. There's a gap there. Elon Musk believes, like libertarians, in ultimate freedom of speech, that it enlivens public discourse and leads to new ideas, that the cream of the crop of ideas will rise to the top in a debate. And you can't put limits on it because, again, if you do that, that's not freedom. That's oppression. It's very laissez-faire. Minimal government influence, no government influence, really. Just let people talk. And the cream will rise to the top, and we will evolve and become better. That's libertarianism. That's his idea. No limits. Because that's ruled by the people. But we need moral filters from private and government organizations to keep a diverse society safe from the worst parts of itself. There is no such thing as freedom without responsibility unless we want autocracy or anarchy. But something Elon Musk and many others forget is that this country, even with its constitution and its laws, has an awful history of how we treat those who have had their freedoms infringed on. Black folk, Native Americans, Asians, GBLTQ, women, Jews, all of these minoritized groups have had their search for truth and meaning stalled or stunted by individual or corporate or governmental forces. That's our history. What does a free and responsible search for truth and meaning mean if you are from an oppressed group? Well, it means for me that it can be hard to find meaning and hold on to what is true when there's so many forces opposing your advancement at every turn. And those forces use the tools of freedom as weapons of oppression. But we must be resilient and hold on to what is true. That brings me back to my humanity when I want to hate. I know that every human being needs food and water and to feel safe and to be loved and to belong, and that we all die one day. These things are truths. In a world of vastly changing ideas, these permanents, these truths remain. But when it comes to religion and spirituality, that's different. It's more subjective. What you find true about God or no God may vary from person to person. You and others have similarities, but each belief is different. We each make meaning based upon what we know and have experienced. And that too can be similar, but varies from person to person. So the word responsible comes along and reminds us that those individual beliefs are one thing, but as we and I interact with the world, with other people, there are consequences to my words and deeds. So responsibility and accountability go hand in hand in a civil society. And then I think about the rapper Kanye West and some of the ignorant statements he's made recently. I understand his angriness, his anger. I understand as a Black man how he feels in the system. I get that. But I don't understand his irresponsibility with the words that he uses. And he's justly being held accountable by the companies that pay him. You are free to search, you're free to find your truths and to believe them, whatever they might be as an individual. But when you share them publicly, you may face ridicule. It's a natural check and balance, except when those being checked don't have the ability to pause and reflect on their actions. That's what we're facing right now. The natural check and balance. People just gaslight now. Oh, it's not my problem, it's your problem. That lack of accountability to silence yourself, to be thoughtful. And it's so shocking that we give attention to it. And so we keep giving attention to it, and it attracts people like that to it. And they say, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And it creates this vicious cycle of purgatorial abuse. That's where we are today. And it can have grave consequences, violence, raising up the worst of humanity to lead us. Feed health and starve dysfunction. Watching this political sparring in the last few weeks, I can't wait for this midterm to be over. I don't really know what to say about the blatant lies and the fact that people don't understand universal law, cosmic law, God's law. You reap what you sow. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, Newton said. There is a karmic force in this universe that will adjust to injustices over time in due season. But how much hurt will be done until that time comes? And I'm praying this morning for wisdom for our masses, for love and compassion to come forth. So don't lose faith. It may be a difficult couple of weeks or months or years, but I still believe that the moral arc of the universe is long, but bends toward justice. That was said by Unitarian Theodore Parker and made famous by Martin Luther King. When a Black man became president in 2008 to 2016, this country fundamentally changed for the better. But it also generated an equal and opposite reaction. And if you are a BIPOC person, these forces are familiar. They have manipulated our system for years, been the underbelly of our society, keeping us separate and unequal, with overt and covert advertisements and laws that perpetuate bigotry. These forces do not want free and responsible searching for truth and meaning because they fear it may lead to a more racially diverse society where they are not the majority. And they do not want free and responsible search for truth and meaning because it is a progressive idea that unites instead of divides if people hold themselves accountable, because it embraces instead of erases. And these shadowy forces have not been willing to face the reality that multiculturalism and diversity are good for humanity. And they're losing their grip and clinging to outmoded realities, being left behind. And you can see it in all the disparate voices, the lack of cohesion, the lack of ideas. Their cheese has moved and they don't want to find new cheese, and so they repress. But my prayer today is that we keep searching for ways to see them too as our people, because they are. That in our quest to make meaning, that we make space for them too. It's hard. Being a spiritual person is hard. This is one of those hard things. They have caused harm and will cause more harm, and we will too. So we are people of faith who hold ourselves accountable. And if we don't act in a forgiving manner to them, we run the risk of becoming that ourselves. So in my search for truth and meaning, I go around and around in what I believe, my presuppositions, suppositions. I think about other people's point of view. I try to put myself in their shoes, to see it through their eyes. And I do that until I find a modicum of compassion. But then I come back to reality and I think about January 6th and the Proud Boys and hate groups, and then I get mad. But then I think again and I look at them as scared little boys, poverty, miseducation, and I have a bit of compassion again. But then I see the charlatans and loudmouth politicians and the lies and hypocrisy, and I get mad again. And then I come to church on Sunday and I get hugs and handshakes and smiles, and I have love in my heart again. Round and round I go. But every day I get to decide what it is I choose to believe in. Each day I get to decide, then challenge myself to keep resolving and evolving until I come back to love. Because I believe in the fourth principle. Love has to be my decision. Love has to be my decision. That is my prayer for you in these coming few weeks and months or even years, that love will be your decision. The road might get rough, the going might get tough, the hills might get hard to climb, but there's a river flowing in your soul. And it will remind you that you are somebody and that everybody's somebody. That is my prayer for you, for us. Keep loving, keep hoping. That will sustain us in the days ahead. In the name of all that is holy and righteous, I leave these words. Amen.